अथ शिवसङ्कल्पसूक्तम् यज्जाग्रतो दूरमुदैति दैवम् तदु सुप्तस्य तथैवैति दूरङ्गमं ज्योतिषां ज्योतिरेकम् तन्मे मनः शिवसङ्कल्पमस्तु येन कर्माण्यपसो मनीषिणो यज्ञे कृण्वन्ति विदथेषु धीराः यदपूर्वं यक्षमन्तः प्रजानां तन्मे मनः शिवसङ्कल्पमस्तु यत्प्रज्ञानमुत चेतो धृतिश्च यज्ज्योतिरन्तरमृतं प्रजासु यस्मान्न ऋते किञ्चन कर्म क्रियते तन्मे मनः शिवसङ्कल्पमस्तु येनेदं भूतं भुवनं भविष्यत् परिगृहीतममृतेन सर्वं येन यज्ञस्तायते सप्तहोता तन्मे मनः शिवसङ्कल्पमस्तु यस्मिन् ऋचः सामयजूषि यस्मिन् प्रतिष्ठिता रथनाभाविवाराः यस्मिंश्चित्तं सर्वमोतं प्रजानां तन्मे मनः शिवसङ्कल्पमस्तु सुषारथिरश्वानि वयन्मनुष्यात् नेनीयते भीषुभिर्वाजिन इव हृत्प्रतिष्ठं यदजिरञ्जविष्ठं तन्मे मनः शिवसङ्कल्पमस्तु ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः।
So picture this. It is exactly 9:55 a.m. on August 17th, 2026.
Okay.
And a poet, his name is Mukund Bhalerao. He sits down to write. He's in Chhatrapati Sambhaji Nagar over in Maharashtra, India.
Right.
And he realizes almost immediately that he is being completely paralyzed by a ghost.
Just one go.
Oh, well, no, actually, not just one. He is being paralyzed by, like, the 3,000-year-old ghosts of the absolute greatest literary giants in human history.
Wow. Yeah, that'll do it.
Right. And he's sitting there staring at this blank page. And he's experiencing this phenomenon that, I mean, if you are an aspiring creative writer listening to this, or really just any lifelong learner, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, absolutely. Anyone who has ever tried to, synthesize complex ideas has felt this.
Exactly, because society constantly feeds us this really romanticized vision of the blank page,
Like
right?
the whole limitless potential thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
like, oh, look at this glorious open white screen where your imagination can just run totally wild.
Right, like it's this beautiful open meadow or something.
Right, exactly. But for our poet, at 9:55 a.m., that blank page did not feel like an open meadow. It felt like a claustrophobic little room where the walls were just actively shrinking in on him.
Yeah, that's a very different vibe.
The cursor's just doing that thing, just blinking at him, mocking him. And he is utterly frozen. But, and this is the really wild part, he wasn't paralyzed because he lacked ideas.
Right, which is what we usually assume writer's block is.
Exactly. He was paralyzed because he was absolutely crushed under the sheer, staggering volume of the ideas he already had.
Yeah, I mean, that is just the absolute definition of creative paralysis. It's basically the paradox of choice, but applied directly to human imagination.
The paradox of choice. I like that.
Yeah, because when the cognitive load reaches this sort of critical threshold, your brain's executive functioning essentially just, it short circuits.
It blue screens.
Exactly. We always talk about writer's block like it's an empty well, right? Like a drought of inspiration.
Right, like you're just out of juice.
Yeah, but what we're actually looking at here and what Mukund documented so meticulously in this poem is the exact opposite.
It's a flood.
It is a flood. It's a mental dam breaking.
Yeah.
You've got so much intellectual and emotional water just rushing into the valley of your mind that the actual infrastructure of language the words themselves, they just wash away entirely.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Hmm.
Because that intensely relatable feeling, that really specific, exquisite agony of having so much profound material inside your head that you just cannot articulate a single coherent word, that is exactly what we are getting into today.
And it is such a rich topic to dive into.
It really is. So welcome to a new deep dive, specifically tailored for all you aspiring writers, you chronic overthinkers, and the lifelong learners listening to us right now.
Which is probably all of us, honestly.
Definitely. I want you to step into the chaotic, highly overstimulated mind of a modern creator who is standing at the very foot of an intellectual mountain.
It's a daunting place to stand.
It really is. And we have an incredibly raw, real-time documentary of a mind in the throes of this exact creative burnout to use as our grounding source today.
A literal, real-time documentary.
Literally. It is a freshly penned Marathi poem written today titled Utarand by Mukund Bhalerao.
It's just a brilliant piece of work.
It is. And our mission today is to basically adopt the persona of this struggling contemporary poet. We're going to map his journey from crippling artistic doubt to a very strange, almost counterintuitive kind of literary clarity.
Right, because clarity doesn't always look the way we think it should.
Exactly. So we'll be unpacking the internal psychological warfare between prose, poetry, and the essay. And we're going to apply ancient Indian philosophy to this highly modern creative exhaustion.
It's quite the collision of worlds.
It really is. But before we get into the heavy philosophical architecture of his paralysis, I have to ask you about the foundation here.
Okay, shoot.
The title itself is Utarand. I frankly have never heard that word before. What exactly does it mean in this context?
So Utarand is this brilliant, highly specific spatial metaphor. In traditional Maharashtrian culture, and really broader Indian culture too, an Utarand refers to a vertical stack of earthen pots.
Okay, like pots you'd keep in a kitchen.
Exactly, typically kept in a kitchen. So imagine, 5, maybe 6 or 7 terracotta pots stacked precariously on top of one another.
Oh, wow. That sounds unstable.
Right. And they're usually arranged from the largest, heaviest pot at the very bottom, tapering up to the smallest pot at the top.
What do they actually put in them?
Historically, they stored essential things: grains, seeds, water, spices, that kind of stuff. But the actual genius of the poet using this specific word as the title lies in the physics of the object itself.
The physics. How so?
Well, an uterine is not a stable, rigid structure, right? It's not like a wooden bookshelf. It relies entirely on a delicate, terrifying center of gravity.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, so if you want something from, say, the third pot down, you cannot just aggressively pull it out.
Because the whole thing would just topple over.
Exactly. The entire towering structure requires incredibly mindful, cautious interaction. If you pull the wrong pot, or if you just lose focus for a second, the whole stack comes violently crashing down. The clay shatters, the grains spill everywhere.
Okay, so he is using this precarious, fragile tower of earthen pots in a kitchen as a direct metaphor for his own mind.
Precisely. In the very opening stanza, the poet establishes this towering, highly unstable architecture of his own consciousness.
That's such a vivid image.
He actually writes, a massive stack has been formed, a difficult path of thoughts. So he isn't dealing with just one or two fleeting ideas here.
Right, it's not just, what should I have for lunch?
No, he has stacked profound, heavy philosophical concepts right on top of complex emotional narratives, which are stacked on top of highly specific poetic images.
And the center of gravity in his head is just incredibly unstable.
Extremely unstable. He looks at this mental Utarand, and then he shifts the metaphor slightly to really capture the scale of it. He compares it to a ghat.
A ghat, like the mountain pass.
Yes, exactly. A winding, treacherous, high-altitude mountain pass. He asks himself in the poem, how many paths, how many turns, how will this massive mountain pass be crossed?
Man, and crucially, it is not a quiet mountain pass.
Not at all.
Like if we are picturing a serene, lonely hike through the Himalayas, we have the completely wrong image. He describes it in the text as a massive crowd of abundant thoughts.
Right.
It is loud. It is deafeningly loud in his head.
And this is exactly where we see the transition from a structural problem to a full-on psychological crisis. The sheer volume of the thoughts creates this insurmountable noise.
Yeah, the noise just blocks everything out.
The mind gets so crowded that selective focus, which is, the primary biological requirement for actually writing anything down, becomes physically impossible.
You literally can't pick one thing to look at.
Right. He literally writes, "What should I focus on? I can't understand anything."
Wow.
And this right here is the fundamental friction of the modern creative dilemma. I mean, we live in an era that is characterized by an unprecedented velocity of information.
Unprecedented is right. It's exhausting.
You have so much input, so much inspiration constantly bombarding your prefrontal cortex every single day that your cognitive load just maxes out. The brain physically cannot triage the importance of the thoughts, so it freezes as a defense mechanism.
I am so glad we are framing it this way.
Why is that?
Because usually, if you go to a creative writing workshop or you listen to one of those productivity seminars, doubt and confusion are treated like a bacterial infection.
Oh, yeah, like it's a disease you have to cure.
Exactly. The narrative is always like, oh no, you have contracted writer's block. Quick, here are 5 daily habits to cure it so you can get back to being a productive content machine.
Right, the whole hustle culture approach to art.
Yes. We treat the confusion as a failure of the writer's intellect, like you're just not trying hard enough.
And treating confusion as a disease is just a tragic misunderstanding of the creative mechanism itself.
Tell me more about that.
Well, doubt is not the enemy of the creative process. Doubt is actually the fundamental prerequisite for deep intellectual growth.
Really? The prerequisite?
Absolutely. The paralysis that this poet feels is actually a highly sophisticated cognitive response. Think back to that physical Utarand, that terrifying stack of pots.
Okay. Yeah.
You cannot synthesize or organize a complex structure of ideas without first perceiving the sheer, terrifying weight of the entire pile.
So the fear means you actually get it.
Exactly. The paralysis is an indicator that your brain has successfully grasped the vast complexity of your subject matter. If a topic seems incredibly easy to write about right away,
You're probably missing something.
you are almost certainly missing something. It is highly likely that your understanding of it is entirely shallow. The friction the poet is experiencing is simply the friction of depth.
Okay, but wait, let me push back on that idea of friction for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
Isn't literary clarity supposed to be, I don't know, peaceful?
Peaceful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we envision a master writer finally finding their voice, we always picture this Zen-like moment. The clouds part, the golden sunlight hits the mahogany desk, and the words just flow effortlessly onto the page like water.
Ah, the romanticized myth again.
Right. But what he is describing in this poem and what you are framing as a necessary precursor to that clarity sounds less like a flowing river and more like a catastrophic traffic jam in the brain.
It is a traffic jam.
It sounds agonizing. So why does depth have to be so painful?
Because that assumption that clarity arrives in a state of tranquil, unbothered peace is a completely modern, sterilized myth.
Sterilized. I like that word for it.
It's an illusion sold to us by, the wellness industry, but applied to creativity. The truth is, enduring clarity is almost always forged in the white-hot center of that mental traffic jam.
So the pain is part of the process.
The agony he feels is his brain actively attempting to build entirely new neural pathways. It's trying to connect disparate, massive ideas that have literally never been connected before. The pain is just the physical sensation of cognitive expansion.
Man. Okay, let me try to put a really modern lens on this mental traffic jam because I think everyone listening will relate to this.
Let's hear it.
It feels exactly like having 50 browser tabs open at once on an old computer.
Oh, that is the perfect analogy.
You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? You sit down to do some research for an essay, you have Wikipedia open, you have 3 dense academic PDFs downloaded and open.
A YouTube video essay playing in the background?
Yes. Your email is pinging every 2 minutes. And then, suddenly, you hear music.
The worst feeling.
And you're frantic. You are furiously clicking through all 50 tabs, trying to figure out which hidden tab is playing the audio advertisement so you can pause the stupid thing.
And meanwhile, you're not writing a single word.
You cannot write. You cannot think. And it's not because you don't have information. It's because the background processing is draining all of your actual energy.
The 50 browser tabs is the absolute perfect modern framework for this. But let's actually take your analogy a step further. Let's look at the RAM.
The RAM.
Yeah, the random access memory that those tabs are actually consuming. If you have 50 tabs of simple, plain text open, your computer might honestly be fine.
Sure. It can handle basic text.
Right. But the poet's tabs are not trivial things. They aren't quick Wikipedia summaries or, daily news articles. The tabs he has open in his mind are incredibly heavy, densely encoded applications.
Oh, I see. They are massive programs running all at once.
Exactly. They require massive amounts of psychological RAM just to keep them suspended in his consciousness without crashing, which is exactly why his internal traffic jam is so uniquely severe.
This just makes me want to ask you, the person listening to us in your car or at the gym right now,
It's a great question to reflect on.
when was the last time your own curiosity actually paralyzed you? Think about it. When did your intense desire to know just a little bit more, to read just one more article, to open one more browser tab, actually stop you from creating the very thing you sat down to create?
We constantly praise curiosity, but we rarely talk about the moment curiosity becomes a crushing weight.
Exactly. It's a double-edged sword.
It is, and that is really the pivotal question of the modern information age. But to understand the specific weight crushing our poet here, we have to look closely at the texts he actually mentions in the poem.
Right, because this mental traffic jam isn't constructed of daily anxieties, like remembering to pay a bill or buy milk.
No, not at all.
It is heavily burdened by the ghosts of literal literary giants. The thoughts crowding him out, the tabs draining his mental RAM are some of the most profound, complex, and ancient texts in human history.
Yes. So if the sheer volume of the stack causes the anxiety, how does the modern brain process the specific historical weight of what is actually inside those pots?
Let's get into the specifics of this precarious Utarand, because in the second and third stanzas, the poet explicitly lists his overwhelming sources of inspiration.
And it is a staggering reading list.
Staggering is the right word. He mentions grappling with massive articles on philosophy. He points to the Ramayana. He points to the Mahabharata.
Just massive, massive works.
And he mentions the hymns, the suktas from the Vedas, which he says are literally calling out to him.
And this transition in the poem is where the universal creative struggle becomes deeply, deeply intertwined with the specific gravity of cultural legacy and tradition.
It gets culturally specific very fast.
To genuinely understand the depth of his paralysis, we must unpack the psychological weight of the classical texts he's attempting to wrestle with. He doesn't just mention a good novel he read last week.
Right, it's not the latest bestseller.
No, he mentions the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. These are not merely ancient stories. They represent the absolute zenith of epic storytelling, intricate moral complexity, and intergenerational character conflict.
I think people who haven't read them might not grasp the sheer scale we are talking about here.
It's hard to conceptualize.
Look, we throw the word epic around a lot today to describe, a 3-hour superhero movie. But the Mahabharata is something else entirely.
The scale is almost incomprehensible to the modern, fragmented attention span. I mean, just to give you an idea, the Mahabharata is roughly 10 times the length of the Iliad and the Odyssey combined.
10 times. That is insane.
It is, but it is not just the word count that paralyzes a writer. It is the structural and moral density of the thing.
How so?
The Mahabharata utilizes these incredible nested narratives. It's stories within stories within stories, stretching across multiple generations. It deals with this core concept of dharma, which, is often loosely translated as duty in English.
Right, like doing what you're supposed to do.
But it actually encompasses cosmic law, moral obligation, and the fundamental order of the universe itself.
That's a lot heavier than just duty.
It explores human frailty, vengeance, and the impossible ethical choices of a devastating civil war. There's actually a famous saying about the Mahabharata.
Oh, what is it?
Whatever is here is found elsewhere, but what is not here is nowhere.
Oh, wow. What is not here is nowhere.
It essentially claims to encompass the entirety of the human experience.
Think about the absolute audacity of that claim.
It's staggering.
If you are a young aspiring writer and you truly absorb the reality that a text already exists that maps out every conceivable human emotion, every moral failure, every triumph.
Every possible scenario.
Yeah. How do you even begin to write a simple short story? How do you sit at your keyboard and type a single sentence without feeling completely and utterly redundant?
You do feel entirely redundant, yes.
Yeah.
And that is just the epics. The poet then mentions the Vedas, specifically the suktas, which elevates the paralysis from a literary inadequacy to a deeply spiritual one.
Break down the significance of the Vedas in this context for us. Why do they add a totally different kind of pressure than the epics do?
Okay, so the epics, the Mahabharata and Ramayana, they are considered smriti. That means that which is remembered. It's the tradition passed down by human memory.
Okay, human memory. Got it.
The Vedas, however, are Shruti. That means that which is heard.
Heard from who?
Well, they are considered divine. They are cosmic vibrations perceived by ancient sages, not authored by human minds.
Oh, wow. So no human ego involved at all.
Right. They represent the foundational spiritual, philosophical, and phonetic truths of the entire civilization. And to understand why this specific detail paralyzes our poet, you really have to understand the oral tradition of India.
Okay, lay it on me.
The suktas, these Vedic hymns, they were not originally meant to be read quietly alone in a book. They were chanted.
Out loud.
Yes. And the exact phonetic pronunciation, the meter, the pitch, the length of every single syllable, all of it was preserved with terrifying precision through complex memorization techniques over thousands of years.
Terrifying precision. Because if you mess it up...
If you mess it up, it was believed that you are messing up the vibration. It was believed that the precise vibration of the sukta literally altered the fabric of reality.
Man. So it's not just the meaning of the words that matters, it's the physical, acoustic perfection of them.
Exactly. So imagine you are this struggling contemporary poet, right? You're sitting down with your morning coffee in a modern city apartment.
You've got your laptop open.
You open your laptop to write a poem. You are trying to find the right word, just trying to capture a fleeting, messy human emotion.
And looming ominously right over your shoulder
is the combined weight of ultimate, divinely heard philosophical truth, perfectly preserved in acoustic symmetry, sitting right alongside the greatest, most comprehensive, epic narratives ever constructed by human civilization.
Talk about the ultimate imposter syndrome.
It is crushing.
That is a flawless recipe for total modern burnout. It just paints such a vivid picture of the aspiring creative writer today. You sit down to draft a personal essay, maybe about your childhood or a recent heartbreak, and you physically feel the judgmental, immortal eyes of Vyasa, Valmiki, and the ancient sages just staring over your shoulders, scrutinizing your vocabulary.
You're judging every comma.
Exactly. So I have to ask, how does a creator balance this deep scholarly pursuit, this genuine reverence for history, with their own desperately needed artistic piece?
It's the million-dollar question.
How do you steer your own creative vehicle when the most brilliant ghosts of human history are aggressively backseat driving?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we actually uncover a fascinating, almost tragic contradiction in the poet's experience.
A contradiction? What do you mean?
Well, the ancient Vedic traditions he is reading so intensely heavily emphasize the pursuit of stillness.
Right.
The philosophies contained within these texts actively guide the seeker toward meditation, toward silencing the chaotic fluctuations of the mind, and finding a tranquil realization of the self amidst the chaos of the material world.
Right. The ultimate goal of reading them should theoretically be peace.
Theoretically, yes. Yet, for our modern poet, these very texts, the perfectly metered suktas of the Vedas, the vast moral debates of the epics, they are the primary source of his noise.
Oh, that's wild.
He explicitly writes that they are calling out to him. The ancient tools historically designed to cultivate spiritual stillness have somehow transmuted into the modern weapons of his intellectual anxiety.
Wow.
The texts meant to provide silence are creating a deafening, inescapable roar inside his head.
That is such an incredible, painful irony. The tools for peace literally become the weapons of anxiety.
It's a terrible trap to fall into.
It perfectly highlights how deep reverence for ancient texts actually warps modern creative dilemmas. We revere these works so deeply, we study them so intensely, that we subconsciously feel we have to measure up to them.
Or even worse, we feel like we have to somehow encompass their vastness in our own tiny piece of contemporary art.
Exactly. We look at the ocean of the Mahabharata and we think, I must boil this entire ocean down and fit it into my little 2-page poem.
Precisely. And this leads us to the most crucial, pragmatic question for anyone facing this. How does a creator overcome this specific legacy-induced creative doubt?
Yes, please. Tell us.
How do you find any semblance of stillness when the Vedas themselves are shouting at you through the corridors of your own mind?
I need the answer to this, and I know our listeners do too. Because you can't just ignore history. You can't unread the brilliant things you've read.
No, you cannot unread them, nor should you want to. The path toward clarity here requires a fundamental, radical shift in perspective regarding the actual function of legacy.
Okay, a shift in perspective, like what?
The struggling contemporary poet must learn to acknowledge these epic influences not as towering competitors to be bested, nor as heavy, suffocating burdens to carry on their back. They must be viewed purely as foundational soil.
Foundational soil.
Yes. You do not have to rewrite the Mahabharata. You cannot, and frankly are not expected to, contain the entirety of Vedic philosophy in your morning poem. You just have to find your own single, fragile thread within it.
Just one thread.
Returning to the metaphor of the Ghat, the winding mountain pass we talked about earlier.
Right, the terrifying mountain.
The ancients used their genius to build that massive mountain. Your job is not to build a second mountain. Your job is simply to carve one small, unique, authentic path on the side of it.
Oh, I love that. Just carve one small path. You don't have to be the mountain. You just have to be the hiker.
Exactly. Just be the hiker.
But as we look deeper into the text of Utarand, it becomes very clear that his paralysis isn't just about the content.
No, it shifts entirely.
It's not just the heavy philosophical burden of what to write about that is causing his burnout. He is equally paralyzed by the structural mechanics of how to write it. The very form of expression is breaking his spirit.
Indeed. The poem executes this brilliant thematic pivot right here. The poet transitions from the crushing burden of the ancient content to the highly technical agony of the modern form.
It gets so technical.
It does. And this shift takes us into what is perhaps the most visceral, technically fascinating part of the entire deep dive.
Oh, absolutely. This brings us to the most personified and honestly dramatic stanza of the whole piece.
It's basically a play at this point.
It really is.
Yeah.
If the first half of the poem was a philosophical crisis, this stanza is a full-blown artistic civil war inside his brain.
Listen to how he describes this internal rivalry.
He writes, poetry says, come here. Prose says, friend, come. And the essay also calls out, to whom should I say, come here?
It is just a stunning use of personification. He places himself standing completely frozen at a literal crossroads of genre.
And they're all flirting with him.
Right. These three distinct literary forms are actively, seductively calling out to him, trying to claim his absolute allegiance.
Wow.
We are looking at the intense internal conflict between poetry, prose, and the essay. And we need to be very, very clear about something. For a writer of this caliber, this isn't just a formatting choice on a laptop.
It's not just adjusting the margins in Microsoft Word.
No, this isn't just about whether to hit the enter key at the end of a sentence or let the text wrap to the margin. It is a fundamental choice of the artistic soul.
Unpack the mechanics of that for me. What makes choosing between a paragraph and a stanza a choice of the soul?
Because each of these mediums demands a completely different psychological and neurological state from the writer.
A different neurological state.
Yes. Let's contrast the distinct creative pulls he is experiencing. Let's look at poetry first. The voice saying, come here.
Okay, poetry.
Writing verse demands an absolute surrender to meter, to rhythm, and to the severe economy of language. The strict rules of verse, whether you are writing in traditional meters or even modern free verse, dictate the rhythm of the writer's actual heart.
It's very musical.
Highly musical. In poetry, every single syllable, every breath, every white space left blank on the page has immense gravitational weight.
You can't waste a single word.
You are tasked with distilling vast, chaotic, emotional oceans into tiny, concentrated drops of ink. It demands an incredibly raw emotional vulnerability coupled with ruthless editorial precision.
Sounds exhausting.
It is the language of the right hemisphere of the brain, intuitive, emotional, acoustic.
And what about prose? The voice calling him friend.
Prose offers a completely different kind of aesthetic urgency. It provides a sprawling, expansive, unstructured space.
So you can stretch your legs a bit.
Exactly. It allows the writer to bleed thoughts onto the page in a continuous, forward-moving flow. Prose doesn't distill the ocean like poetry does. It attempts to map the tidal currents.
That's a great distinction. Mapping the currents instead of distilling the water.
It builds comprehensive worlds with descriptive breadth rather than concentrated bursts.
Okay, so that's prose.
And then you have the essay, the third voice, calling out in the poem. The essay demands something else entirely. Strict logical structure, argumentative rigor, left brain, analytical clarity.
It's the intellectual voice.
Yes, and a commitment to philosophical truth over emotional resonance.
Okay, hold on. Here's where it gets really interesting, because I have to step in and offer some rigorous pushback on our poet, Mukund Bhalerao, for a second.
Go for it.
Why are we treating this like an inescapable, fatal binary?
What do you mean?
I mean, this feels like an artificial constraint the poet is projecting onto himself just to justify his own paralysis.
You think he's making up the rules?
Kind of. Look at literary history. Shakespeare wrote in rigid iambic pentameter while simultaneously plotting out massive, sprawling, prose-like narratives that explored deep logic and philosophy. Walt Whitman completely shattered the boundary between poetry and prose with Leaves of Grass. Prose poetry is a widely recognized genre today. Lyric essays exist that beautifully blend logical rigor with emotional vulnerability.
Also true.
Blurring the lines is entirely possible. So why is this modern writer acting as if picking between verse and essay is this agonizing, mutually exclusive life or death choice?
That is an excellent challenge, but it underestimates the psychological phenomenon of cognitive code switching that the writer is experiencing in real time.
Cognitive code switching.
Yes, masterpieces that blend genres definitely exist, but they are the result of extreme mastery over the transition between states.
Oh, so it's not easy to jump back and forth.
Not at all. For the writer, in the moment of creation, the medium inevitably shapes the boundaries of the message. The struggle here is about mapping out literary clarity in a mind that is already overflowing.
Okay, walk me through that.
Think of it like a physics problem. If you use a thermometer, you can accurately measure the temperature of the water. If you use a scale, you can measure its weight, but you cannot use the thermometer to measure weight.
The tool determines what aspect of reality you are capable of capturing.
Exactly. If the poet chooses to surrender to the essay, the deep, raw, irrational, emotional vulnerability of the verse is almost inevitably lost behind the necessary walls of logic and argumentative structure.
You lose the heart to keep the brain.
Right. And if he chooses poetry, the comprehensive, sprawling, encyclopedic detail of the prose must be sacrificed to maintain the acoustic rhythm.
You have to cut the details to keep the beat.
The rivalry paralyzes the author because to choose one form is to momentarily, violently kill the potential of the others. By turning and saying, "Come here" to poetry, he is actively turning his back on the sweeping, detailed landscapes of prose.
That feel like a heavy choice.
For a mind that is currently holding 50 open tabs of philosophical epics, Vedic hymns, and complex thoughts, confining that chaotic beauty into just one single structural form feels like a profound betrayal of the ideas themselves.
It's like trying to catch a massive, chaotic thunderstorm in a teacup.
Yes.
But you have 3 differently shaped teacups in your hands, and you are so terrified of picking the geometrically wrong teacup for this specific lightning strike that you just stand there in the field doing nothing, getting absolutely soaked by the rain.
That captures the paralysis perfectly. The fear of doing a disservice to the thought by placing it in the wrong vessel prevents any vessel from being used at all.
I want everyone listening to this right now to think about your own current creative project.
It's a great moment for self-reflection.
Look closely at the friction you are experiencing right now. Are you forcing a poem into an essay's body? Are you trying to construct a cold, logical argument for a presentation when what your brain actually wants to do is just bleed raw narrative onto the page?
Which voice is actually calling you friend right now?
Exactly. And which voice are you stubbornly ignoring because society, or your profession, dictates that you should be writing in a different format?
It is a vital exercise for any aspiring creative writer or communicator. Recognizing which structural form the idea is organically demanding to be housed in is half the battle in overcoming that mountain of doubt.
It really is.
However, what's fascinating here is that the poet's inability to choose a medium is ultimately revealed to be a symptom of a much deeper problem.
Wait, it gets deeper than the structural soul of the medium.
It does. The anxiety over poetry versus prose is really just the surface friction. The poet reveals the absolute, unvarnished core of his artistic frustration in the final stanza of the poem.
Okay, hit me.
And it's not about structural formats, and it's not about the ancient Vedas versus the modern world. It is a fundamental biological and spiritual problem of input versus output.
Input versus output. Let's look at that final stanza then, because it is genuinely haunting. It reads almost like a confession.
It does.
He writes, "How to write without reading. No satisfaction without writing. No matter how much I read, still hungry. Keep writing the same, but no satisfaction."
It is a loop.
A brutal, endless, suffocating loop.
What is most profound here is how accurately he has diagnosed the paradox of unending hunger.
The paradox of unending hunger.
This stanza captures the ultimate tragedy of the lifelong learner and the dedicated, obsessed writer. As intellectuals, we operate under this deeply ingrained cognitive illusion.
What illusion?
We believe that if we just read enough, if we just consume enough high-quality knowledge, if we just study one more philosophy book, we will eventually be full.
Right. We believe in this magical finish line to learning.
We believe there is a saturation point.
Exactly. The idea that you will finally acquire the exact necessary quotient of information to write the perfect piece. And once that piece is written, you can sit back, rest, and be completely satisfied.
We crave that saturation point so badly, but the neurological and philosophical reality is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Constant reading does not quench the intellectual thirst. It actively creates the feelings of eternal hunger.
Oh, wow.
The more deeply you explore the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the vast Vedic philosophies, or even just modern physics and psychology, the more you realize how infinitely vast the universe of knowledge actually is.
Let's ground this in the biology of how we consume information. Because there is a dopaminergic loop happening here, isn't there?
Absolutely.
When we read, when we consume novel information, our brain releases dopamine. But dopamine isn't the chemical of satisfaction, it is the chemical of seeking.
Yes, it is the chemical of anticipation.
So the act of reading doesn't fill the tank, it just makes the brain crave more reading.
Precisely.
It's like drinking salt water when you are stranded in the ocean. You are dying of thirst, so you drink the ocean of ancient texts to quench your desire to create. But reading brilliant philosophy only makes you acutely, painfully aware of exactly how much you do not know.
It shrinks your ego.
It shrinks your ego, it exponentially expands your horizon, and it leaves you infinitely thirstier than you were before you took the first sip.
The dopaminergic loop is the exact biological mechanism behind spiritual complaint. You consume information to prepare to write, but the consumption itself starves you.
That is so bleak.
You think you are filling a finite cup, but every book you read physically expands the size of the cup, meaning it constantly feels emptier than when you started.
And then comes the second, even more devastating half of his paradox.
The output.
Yes. Even the act of writing, producing the art, doing the hard work, finally getting the words on the page, it fails to bring the expected, genuine satisfaction. He explicitly states, keep writing the same, but no satisfaction.
It's heartbreaking.
That has to be so deeply frustrating. You would logically think that after suffering all this friction, after climbing the mountain of thoughts, fighting off the intimidating ghosts of ancient sages, and painfully agonizing over the right medium between poetry and prose, the ultimate reward would be a deep, physiological sigh of relief.
Right, you expect to pay off.
A profound feeling of, I did it. The art is complete. I am satisfied.
You would think so. But if we look closely at the psychology of the creative struggle across centuries, we discover a hidden truth that entirely flips this narrative.
Flips that how?
This exact lack of fulfillment, this unending, painful hunger, is not a flaw in the writer's process.
It's not a flaw.
No. It is actually the core sustenance of the writer's existence.
Hold on. The starvation is the sustenance. That sounds like a riddle. Explain how the lack of satisfaction sustains the artist.
Well, think about the alternative. Consider the hypothetical situation where our poet, Mukund Bhalerao, achieved what he thinks he wants.
Okay.
Imagine he wrote a poem, put his pen down, and felt entirely, 100% full. Imagine he felt completely and totally satisfied with his prose, believing he had captured the absolute truth of the universe perfectly.
Okay, I'm imagining it.
What would happen the next morning at 9:55 a.m.?
Oh, he wouldn't sit down to write.
There would be no reason to.
Exactly. He would stop writing entirely.
The search for fulfillment is the engine of art. The dissatisfaction with the current poem is the exact required fuel to write the next poem.
That makes so much sense.
The reason writers continue to evolve, to push boundaries, to explore new structures, is because the previous structure failed to satisfy them. This eternal hunger isn't a curse imposed upon the artist. It is the vital sign of a living, breathing intellect.
So satisfaction is actually death for an artist.
A satisfied artist is a stagnant artist. The exact moment you are completely satisfied with your output is the moment your artistic growth terminates.
That completely shatters the paradigm.
Yeah.
So the goal of the aspiring writer shouldn't be to cure the hunger. The goal shouldn't be to finally reach a point where you feel ready or full.
Absolutely not. Which brings us to the final, actionable path toward clarity for both our struggling poet and for everyone listening who wrestles with this paralysis.
I am taking notes.
True stillness amidst all these confusing choices. The Veda shouting from history, the prose and poetry pulling at your soul, the 50 browser tabs of information. That stillness is not achieved by finding the perfect combination of words that will bring total, final satisfaction.
Because those words don't exist.
You will never find those words.
Then how do you achieve the stillness required to create? How do you actually get the words on the page when the noise is that loud?
You achieve it by making peace with the hunger.
Making peace with the hunger.
The literary clarity arrives the exact moment you realize that the Utarand, that towering, precarious stack of earthen pots in your mind, is never, ever meant to be fully emptied.
Wow.
You cannot clear the mind of its profound ideas. You are meant to live alongside the stack. You are meant to learn to sit quietly with the noise of the ancients, to accept the agonizing tension of choosing mediums, and to embrace the biological hunger that never goes away.
You just let it be.
The journey from crippling doubt to creative clarity isn't about eliminating the doubt. It is about accepting the doubt as the fundamental, necessary environment in which all meaningful art is constructed.
You just have to sit comfortably in the traffic jam and accept that the cars are never going to clear out.
Beautifully said.
That completely reframes the entire creative process from a battle to be won into a landscape to be inhabited.
It's a much healthier way to live as a creator.
And you know what is truly wild about this entire deep dive?
What's that?
Look back at the literal timestamp on our source material. Mukund Bhalerao finished writing this agonizing, beautiful poem about his absolute inability to write at exactly 9:55 a.m.
Right.
And knowing everything we just discussed about the dopaminergic loops and the eternal hunger, I can guarantee you that by 10 a.m., 5 minutes later, that exact same unquenchable hunger pushed him to open a new document and start writing something else.
Without a single doubt, the cycle is unbroken. The hunger constantly demands to be fed, even while the intellect knows it will never ever be satisfied.
That is the beautiful tragedy of the creative life.
It really is.
Which brings us to the end of our journey today. We have covered an immense amount of psychological and philosophical ground.
We certainly have.
We have bravely climbed the precarious Utarand of the poet's mind, navigating the terrifying, winding, chaotic mountain pass of modern information overload.
We have faced down the intimidating 3,000-year-old ghosts of ancient Indian epics and the divine vibrations of the Vedas.
Ultimately realizing they must serve as our foundational soil, not our direct competition.
Exactly.
We have survived the fierce, agonizing right brain versus left brain tug of war between poetry demanding our vulnerability and prose demanding our sprawling logic.
And ultimately, we have learned that we must sit comfortably with the eternal biological hunger of the creative spirit.
So what does this all mean? To all the young, aspiring creative writers, to the researchers and the lifelong learners listening to this right now, hear this clearly.
Yes, listen up.
Your doubt, your daily burnout, your paralyzing feeling of a massive crowd of abundant thoughts, and your enduring lack of satisfaction with your own work. These are not signs of your failure.
They are the ultimate proof that you are actively engaged in the true, difficult artistic process. The friction proves you are moving forward.
So what does this all mean for you when you open your laptop tomorrow morning? Stare at the blinking cursor and feel the walls start to shrink.
It means that to create is to exist in a beautiful, highly charged, unresolved tension.
Stop trying to cure the tension. Stop trying to resolve the paradox. Embrace the deafening noise in your own mind. Acknowledge the ghosts over your shoulder. And just keep climbing your own impossible mountain of thoughts, one precarious pot, one imperfect word at a time.
And as you move forward into your own creative endeavors this week, I want to leave you with one final, lingering, provocative thought to consider on your own.
Leave us with something good.
If constant reading only fuels eternal hunger, and if the profound act of writing never brings total, lasting satisfaction, what if the true masterpiece of a writer's life isn't the finished poem perfectly formatted on the page or the published essay bound in a book?
Then what is it?
What if the true masterpiece is the shape of the unquenchable hunger they leave behind?
Wow, the shape of the hunger. That is something to sit with. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the beautiful, chaotic mind of the modern creator. Keep reading, keep starving, and we will catch you next time.
Shanti Antariksham Shanti Prithvi Shanti Apah Shanti Aushadhayah Shanti Vanaspatayah Shanti Vishve Devah Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shantireva Shanti Sama Shantiredhi Yato Yatah Samihase Tato no Abhayam Kuru Shamnah कुरु प्रजाभ्यो भयं नः पशुभ्यः सुशान्तिर्भवतु। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्।